Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we'll be covering Showmaker's Smolder. And Smolder is an interesting pick. I think it's at the bottom of A or maybe mid A in terms of power. But I think it's overall pretty underrated, I would say. Like, some people think it's really OP and some people think it's really useless. I think it's, slightly on the stronger side, but maybe not, super overbearingly strong. But let's kind of talk about like why you might pick Smolder. So obviously it's an AD mid with mobility, which is quite valuable. Another thing with Smolder is that you can build quite tanky. So something you're going to see this game is he ends up going the tanky build, which I believe is Shojin into a Leandry. And then from there, you can go stuff like Riftmaker, you can go Frozen Heart, you can go Iceborne and stuff like that. And so because you're able to build tanky, Smolder is very, very good against comps that are very heavy on one damage type. So like this comp, for example, very heavy on AD. You've only got the Maokai and the Lulu for AP damage. So that means if you itemize armor this game, you're going to be very, very difficult to kill. And even if you're like, yeah, even if you're maybe not doing the utmost DPS of the likes of, if you went some like Essence or even Navori build, you're going to be virtually unkillable. And a lot of your damage is just going to come from your stack. So I really like Smolder into these heavy, damage comps. Kind of like Ezreal. If you pick Ezreal into a full AD comp and then you build a Frozen Heart, feels really good, right? That's the same sort of thing. But let's talk about the Smolder early game. So Smolder in the early game is actually quite good. What most people do is they go for 3 points in W with a fairly strong early game page. So you go like the Comet, the Scorch, you get extra mana to facilitate your W usage. And this allows a lot of W spam. Now on 14.4, I believe this early W spam is getting nerfed a little bit. It probably is still the way to go, but you're just going to be a little less powerful in the laning phase, which is fair enough. Because at the moment, Smolder is kind of like Victor in the sense that, yes, he's not the greatest skirmisher, but he is actually really, really good in the laning phase. Like, these Ws hit incredibly hard, and obviously they slow, so it guarantees Comet, it procs Scorch, all that sort of stuff. And your main goal in the early game really is to just set up the creeps so that they're easy for you to last hit with Q or to hit your opponent with Ws. I will say it's normally better to prioritize hitting your opponent, because obviously hitting your opponent gives you a stack. So you do want to prioritize hitting your opponent if you can. Now he gets ganked mid. I think he does end up dying to this, most likely. Yeah, ends up going down. So we can go back a little bit and kind of see why he died to this. So I would say mainly it was the ward placement. So he placed his ward very early on these raptors, and this is not so much a bad ward, but then he didn't respect the fact that he didn't have it, right? Like if you look right now, top side of mid and bottom side of mid don't really have any vision, and he's still very, very pushed up. So he kind of felt safe probably because he had this Brand next to him, but Talon was able to find kind of a hole, I guess, in the vision and exploit that. So it's an unfortunate first death. At the same time though, like as long as you're stacking and like if you have TP and stuff, it's not too bad. So he goes home, grabs the color refillable. I think, something I think is super important at the moment is having a lot of sustain for lane. And the reason for that is there are a lot of fights in the early game at the moment. So just early game and power in general is really, really important, right? Like there's a lot of fights with void grubs and stuff. Like having mid priority is quite important for stopping roams. And one of the ways you can do that is just by having more sustain than your opponent. Like if you're able to stay on the map longer than they are, that adds up to a lot. So going something like Cull Refillable, it gives you a little bit of lifesteal, obviously. And also the Refillable is giving you 200 health. So if your opponent comes back to lane and doesn't have these, you're going to find that you're just able to stay on the map a lot longer than they are. Now here, he just ran top to catch this wave because Riven wasn't going to get there in time. So not too much to say about that. Really just trying to maximize the CS. We can kind of skip through this part. Now, the awkward thing that sometimes happens when you swap like this is the wave can end up frozen and you can be unable to crash it because most mid laners are kind of weak and, like shouldn't be able to crash a wave into a top laner because they're going to be too strong. So generally when that happens, you just try and swap early. By the way, I have no idea why that's so loud. For some reason, I think Smolder ult is like not affected by the sound or something. I don't know. Or maybe it's classed as like ambience or something. I don't know. But anyway, sorry, I just blew out everyone's eardrums. For some reason, that spell is way louder than anything else. So here they end up swapping, I think, more out of convenience than anything. It could be that they just wanted to, swap into easier lanes, right? Like, I think Riven probably does beat Zed harder than Smolder does, so it might have been that too. But anyway, just gonna keep farming. Now, he still doesn't have his AoE stack of 25. Admittedly, his stacks are kind of low, but the thing is with Smolder is, like, it's kind of like buying a tier in a way. Like if you don't stack it too high early game, it's not too bad as long as you're really efficient with the stacks later on. As long as you're like not dying and you're staying relevant, you should be able to like get your stacks up eventually. Now I'll say like a good goal I think for the stacks is to have 10 stacks per minute. Like if you can hit say 225 stacks at around 22 minutes, like that would be a fairly decent time. In fact, it might even be a little slow. I remember one game, this is a pretty big extreme, but I played against the Malzahar, so I was getting like lots of stacks from his Voidlings. And I think I had 225 stacks at like 17 minutes or 18 minutes or something. So against certain champs, or if you get like tons of freedom, it is possible to stack that high, but yeah, it's not realistic a lot of the time. Now he has hit his AoE here, and after you've started, or after you've stopped putting points in W, so normally you stop at 3 points, you pretty much just want to W the back wave and then just last hit it with Q. So that's going to give you a lot of stacks. Make sure to last the melees with Q first, because if you Q the back line first, then you're not going to be able to stack off the melees. But if you Q the front line first, chances are you will still be able to stack off the melees. Now here, I think he would just try to greed a little bit and get, you know, the stack with the cannon, but the cannon doesn't give you any more stacks, so it would have been better, I think, just to queue the 3 of them. But anyway, it looks like they've committed very fully to the lane swap. But at this point, this is when you really want to start kind of accelerating your stacks. Like, if you can, similar to other champs, like, you want to prep the creeps so that you can get, you know, more than 1 stack per queue, and that's when you're really going to be able to get ahead. Remember as well that, like, if the splash hits your opponent as well, that does count as an extra stack, so this is really, like, the time you can start to snowball off it. Now here, might be in a bit of trouble. Maokai has a ton of CC. Perhaps he can ult and save himself. Yeah, looks like he should be okay. I think this Maokai's boom. Yeah, okay, so he manages to get out. It's pretty close, though. I think pretty disrespectful by him. Again, like, Smolder can sort of struggle in the early game. Like, he is very powerful, I think, especially levels 1 through 5, like, when he's got this, like, W thing. But after that, it can be kind of troublesome. Like, from the, I would say, like, level 6 to level 9 period is really scary, because your opponent's ult is probably going to be stronger than yours most of the time, and you don't really have the damage anymore to push them out. So I'm pretty sure you should just reset in base here. But it looks like he's waiting for Pyke to come from base, so he's kind of like baiting the Maokai. And they might be able to pick up a kill with Pyke. Alternatively, maybe he's going to overstay and die. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Yeah, this looks pretty disastrous, I'm not going to lie. Okay, so he ends up dying again. So sort of rough early game, but, you know, at the same time, like, we're still getting our stacks. He actually did end up doing the most damage this game. And I think that's, like, important too, because this game was relatively short. And so, like, you know, a lot of people kind of say that Smolder is completely useless pre-225 stacks, and, like, I don't think that's, like, totally true. You know, again, you have, like, that strong laning phase early. You have that spike at 125 stacks where you start to kind of become relevant, I guess. But yeah, we'll kind of see how he keeps going here. So he is building that Shodan as the first item. Make sure to buy the CDR components first, just because you need that CDR for getting more stacks. Again, like, the more abilities you can hit, the more you can last hit, the better. So he's trying to get top priority here and use this to go for the Void Grubs. Another extremely loud ultimate. So that's good. Like, they trade ultis there for the Maokai ult, and that's something you can look to do kind of proactively on Smolder, is trade your ults with your opponent, because your ult is, I mean, it's good, but it's not going to be as impactful in fights as some other ults. You know, like, if you could trade Smolder ult for Ori ult, for example, especially like ahead of Void Grubs, I would say that would be good. Or if you can trade it with an Assassin's ult, and they can't roam. Like, let's say he was still playing mid here, and he trades his ult with, like, Zed ult, right? That means that Zed can't roam, most likely, because he doesn't have the ult anymore. But you're not worried about that as Smolder. Like, you're not worried about not having your ult, because it doesn't really, like, change a whole lot for you. So that's something you can look to do. Managed to get the Void Grubs there, and just come back top, keep stacking. Again, try and W the wave first, and really, like, stack efficiently off it. So you can see here, Q's the melees. I think W's through it once, maybe Q's one more. Can't quite get it in time, but Q's all these, and is able to get, like, a ton of stacks with the wave. So now he's starting to catch up, right? Like, 81 stacks, 12 minutes. It's not perfect yet, but he is catching up slowly. And how much gold are we sitting on here? We are sitting on 1,300, so he does have quite a bit. Probably look for a reset soon-ish. For now, though, just going to keep stacking here. Really isn't too much to it. Just kind of skim through this period, because there's not a whole lot to look at. I'm more interested to see, yeah, when he... I'm pretty sure it was Iceborne 3rd, or it might have been Frozen Heart. I'm pretty sure it was Iceborne, though, when I was looking at this. It does feel good if you can buy a Sheen. So, he probably here, he just wants to stay for a bit more gold. He has TP in 25 as well, so he probably wants to time his reset around that. Something I've talked about before, especially when you're playing a champ like Corki, is if you're playing, like, a really greedy farming champ, if possible, you want to try, like, time all your resets with TPs. That way you never miss creeps while you're recalling. Because on some champs, right, like, recalling earlier might be better because it improves your pressure on the map, right? Like, even though you can't spend as much gold, you get on the map earlier and you're, like, ready to pressure and everything like that. But as a farming champ, like, you can't really pressure even if you're on the map. It's not like Smolder is going to be running around looking for roams. So instead, you might just want to really try and time those bases around the TP. That way you're just absolutely maximizing the time that you can spend farming on the map, and just really try and make sure you don't miss any random CS. So now that he has the Shojin, it's going to be a lot easier to continue to stack, and it's a pretty significant one-item spike. Like, you can look to get involved in fights and stuff like this, and this is when you're kind of looking to start stealing kills, I guess, as Smolder. In this situation, Malco TP bot, so we're just able to push wave and then probably take the top tower, or at least have a look at it. But as I was saying, like, you know, it's really important as this champ to kind of get your snowball rolling, I guess, but it's pretty hard for you to do that on your own. Like, again, you can stack and you can like try and take as much gold as you can on the side, kind of what he's doing right now. But at some point you're gonna need kill gold, and I think the best place to get that is by coming to a dragon fight and trying to like kind of pick something up from there. Or a herald fight, which is like what's being pinged at the moment, could be another time for it. So if you come to these fights, what you want to do as Smolder is like, you're still fairly squishy at this stage of the game, right? Like, you have Shojin HP, but you have no resistances behind it. So you want to wait for your opponents to use cooldowns, and then you can look to commit. So you can look to go in with E, you can use R, especially if there's already CC being dropped. But be a little careful going in too early. And I think here the ulti probably wasn't the best, but here, like, we see that Z ult has been used, and we can see that like pretty much everyone else is low, so it's fine to commit here. Obviously, he didn't add a whole lot of damage here, but he did manage to get one kill out of it, and is now going to be able to come and get this top tower. So he ends up like pretty ahead in gold off this. Like, if we go back to before this fight and just check his gold, like, what do we got? Let's have a look. So he's got right now 5.9k earned, and then after coming to this fight, after grabbing kills, after clearing this wave, and now taking the top tower. Let's check again. So we went from 5.9 to 6.9. So you went up 1k gold in just like 30 seconds there. And that's why it's really important to look for those little windows where you can snowball a bit further ahead. Because if you were just there, like, I don't know, let's say you're on the other side of the map, AFK farming or something, you know, then you would look at that and be like, well, like, should I be fighting? Maybe not, because I'm not spiked yet, right? But at the same time, something you've got to realize in League is that, like, even if you outscale, like, as a champ, you don't outscale if the enemy team has, like, a bunch more items than you. You know, I'm sure you guys have seen this. Like, have you ever played versus, like, a Draven AD carry, right? Like, Draven doesn't scale ultra well into the late game, but he scales well from the fact that he ends up, like, 4 items ahead of everyone else. You know, like, Draven could be 6 items when the other ADC is on like 3 items. And so it's like, yes, eventually you might outscale that champ, but if you're that far behind in gold, it's not really going to matter. And it's the same here. Like, does Smolder outscale Xayah? I would say yeah, but like, if you end up like super far behind in items, it doesn't really matter. So it's important still to be impactful on the map, even if you're playing like one of these scaling champs. And now you can really see the itemization starting to cuck Zed, right? So Zed obviously is a lethality builder, and he is now laning up against steel caps and a Smolder with plus what, 500? Yeah, plus 500 bonus HP. This is kind of what I mean, like, where Smolder really excels into these comps where you can just itemize like this. Another example of a champ like this is Ryze, actually, because Ryze can go the Frozen Heart third. I already talked about the Ezreal example, but this is when, you know, like, the fact that you can win side lane against a Zed as like a scaling champ, that means like you're in a super good spot because you're able to just like keep accelerating your scaling and everything. And because you win the 1v1, you feel really safe to walk far up. Like, if you don't win the 1v1, what happens here is like Zed is not showing, so you're forced to come group mid. But the thing is, like, you don't really want to group mid unless, like, you're that strong, right? And now you could TP into this fight if you wanted, and you probably should. But also, it's like, okay, if a fight doesn't break out here, you do still feel confident pushing down the side because you're tanky enough that you can beat Zed in the 1v1. So that's, like, very important, because otherwise you can definitely end up kind of starved of resources where, you know, you can't really safely push the side. And even if something else like CDR boots might be more damage, if they mean that you can't actually push the side lane, then it would probably be a mistake, right? Because you're going to end up with less gold overall. Dude, it's so loud, and for what? Anyway, TP's end of the fight here. I think he's still reasonably strong in this fight. This is also like a pretty good spot for him to fight in, where he can kind of fight front to back, poke with Q and let the splash hit people. I think still not at the point where he's like really turbo 1v9, but you can see he's caught up in the stacks a lot, like now 183 at 19. So this is like looking like pretty good in terms of stacks, and obviously he's very, very farmed. He's now very far ahead of Zed. So after winning that fight, you come and push out the side. So I'll quickly talk about this. Like, whenever you win a fight, right? Normally, the biggest mistake you can make is instantly basing, because like while your opponents are dead, that's like a chance for you to take more gold on the map. So like examples are, you could push mid, you could farm bot wave, you could farm raptors, you could try to take enemy raptors if they were uncontested. Basically, you want to try take some gold off the map before you reset. Also though, if you are staying on the map like this, it's super important that you reset before fighting again. So the next objective is Dragon, spawning in 50 seconds. So he knows that he has time. Like, he can afford to stay on the map one more wave, knowing that he will reset and still be here in time to drag. So this is all good, but you would really not want to stay at this point. Like, if he stayed for one more wave and was like, oh, maybe I can get this tower, even if you could, I think it'd probably be a mistake, because he doesn't have TP, so he can't get back in time. And if he couldn't be here on time for the third drag and just like ended up giving it to the enemy team for free, that would feel really bad, right? But instead is able to reset, grabs the Liandry's, and I think Liandry's always in League has been one of the biggest kind of like single DPS increases. You know what I mean? It's like, by buying this item, regardless of if you even have AP in your kit or not, or I guess abilities that scale with AP, it's like even just the health burn will deal a lot of damage, and it increases just your damage, you can see there, by 6%, like when it's fully stacked, which is not like a huge number. I believe it used to be 10 or 12%, like back in the day on old Liandry, but it's still like a nice little bonus increase. Like, people kind of underestimate, I think, how much 6% can be. But we'll kind of check in on the Liandry's damage as we go. Something I'm also not sure about is, it's possible this tooltip is bugged a little bit. I think it doesn't register damage to shields, although I haven't tested that. I'm not totally sure about that, but that might be a thing. Anyway, feeling very strong when you come to this fight here, I think. So we've got 2 items, we've got a lot of stacks, and the enemy team has already committed cooldowns. Like, you saw that the Xayah had already ulted, so it's like very easy to just like chase these people down. Really not a whole lot to it. And he's so incredibly tanky, right? Has like almost 3,000 health, has a lot of resistances as well. He did take flat health. I was going to say he probably took scaling health. I'm pretty surprised by the flat health. Maybe he was just scared of dying to the Zed really early in lane, but yeah, anyway. And going to take a little more with the Herald here before probably just walking away to Dragon. So this is all looking good. Now you come to this. And from here, the only thing you'd have to maybe be careful of, and something worth thinking about for solo queue, is sometimes, like, if you overstay too long, like pushing towers and stuff, and then you do Dragon, that can open up a window for the enemy team to just run straight to Baron. It's pretty unlikely here, I think, because, well, 1, their jungler is bot, and 2, they don't have amazing DPS. Like, they have a Xayah. Well, actually, they have Xayah Lulu. Maybe there's DPS enough on its own. But I guess what I was thinking is, like, well, like, Zed obviously isn't that great at doing it, and with Talon bot, like, they probably just won't do it. But it could be a thing. So it's something you have to be aware of, and, like, if you don't see your opponents there, you'd probably want to instantly run to Baron. Obviously, another thing about Liandry's is, like, when you get your burn, it's going to be proccing over and over, and you have a lot of AoE, so it's easy to spread to multiple targets. It's so loud. I can't believe it. So you can see, you know, 600 damage, or almost 900 damage actually, done by Liandry's already, which is quite a bit. Yeah, that's a pretty significant amount of damage. Obviously, like, sometimes it can be a bait. If you land poke and it doesn't do anything, then clearly that damage doesn't matter. But a lot of that has been in team fights. So it's now about to hit 225 stacks. So you can see, like, 225 at 22 minutes, it's, even though he fell very far behind in stacks early, is definitely not unachievable, as long as you're still able to push out the side lane. But that's why I think it's super important to itemize on this champ to be able to beat your side laner, because you have to be able to farm the side. So I think, like, other things you could consider is, well, I like the Shodan Liandry. I think obviously Merc Treads can help with your 1v1 if you're against AP. Here, I think it was, again, like, 3rd item Iceborne that he's building, but I think you could even go, like, 3rd item, like, Spirit Visage or Kanek or more. You know, I think, like, there's lots of ways that you can build for the 1v1. Yeah, so there he completes his Iceborne. So now 156 armor and 3k HP, which means that, like, obviously the lethality builder of Zed is completely useless, I would say. Yeah, especially if the talent as well. So into double lethality, it feels really, really good. And it's not a champ I've played. I think I've played it on my main once. Like, I haven't played it in the Road to Rank 1 yet. I think I've played it off stream, or off recording, I suppose. But I think it is a champ that I'm likely to pick into double AD mid jungles if I ever see it. In the same way that I really like Ryze versus those champs, or a champ like Galio maybe, that can really just build a lot of armor and make life really, really difficult. So resets again. Now, I'm not sure what he was planning on building for. He started building a Kindle Gem, so obviously it was going to be something tanky, probably. A little bit of HP. I don't think he completed the item before the game was over, but you might be able to check the rest of his match history. I honestly think you can't go too wrong with itemization on this champ at this point. Like, once you've got these, like, 3 core items of, like, 2 damage items and a tank item, kind of like Yone in a sense. Like, you have so much damage just coming, in Yone's case, from Bork, that you can build whatever you want, really. And I think it's kind of the same with Smolder. Like, you have so much damage now coming from, like, Liandry's and your passive and stuff like that. that you just kind of run over the game from here and no one can really kill you. Like, you can kind of see everyone even ignoring Smolder. Like, Zed doesn't even bother. And at the same time, it's like, yeah, why would you hit him if he's basically full tank? But you also can't ignore him, right? Like, he's dealing a lot of damage. You can see now 2k damage done by Leandri. And I believe in this game, he did about 26k damage in 25 minutes, which is pretty substantial for a champ that is kind of meant to be weak early game. So I guess the TLDR of Smolder overall is, I think, he is quite strong. You do need to think a little bit about when you're picking him. Like, I think especially is stronger into AD comps or potentially full AP comps as well. It could be quite a good counter pick into. And I think knowing how to itemize and being able to like play the sideline and stuff like that is super, super important on this champ. So that's going to be it for this video. It was a little different because, well, I hadn't watched this VOD before. I'd like looked at the match through. I didn't watch it, so I didn't know he was top lane for a lot of the game. But I think it was still like really useful for learning from, and hopefully I gave you guys a good idea of how I think Smolder should be played. I do plan on making a Smolder guide at some point, but I do want to just get more games in the champ and feel more comfortable and just know that I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? I don't want to make the video feeling not as confident, I guess, about some of the things. But anyway, guys, if you did like the video, go ahead and like and subscribe. Otherwise, come check me out on Twitch, twitch.tv/ShokLol. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.